after the rodeo, they would sit down and talk about what went right and what they can improve on. And that's how he got better. The same thing with you. If you want to be better at something, hang out with people that are really good at that thing. All right. Good morning. Welcome back to Shasta Valley Christian Fellowship. We're in Psalms 26 and 27 this morning. Both these are attributed to David. And I put the two of them together. They're both kind of small, so I think we can knock them out. And this verse here is just for your reference. I'll refer to it later. We're probably not going to go there. Never mind. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump into Psalm 26. We'll go ahead and read all of Psalm 26, and we'll go back and pick it apart a little bit. Psalm 26, verse 1. This is a song of David. Vindicate me, Lord, for I have led a blameless life. I have trusted in the Lord and have not faltered. Test me, Lord, and try me. Examine my heart and my mind. For I have always been mindful of your unfailing love and have lived in reliance on your faithfulness. I do not sit with the deceitful, nor do I associate with hypocrites. I abhor the assembly of evildoers and refuse to sit with the wicked. I wash my hands in innocence and go about your altar, Lord, proclaiming aloud your praise and telling all of your wonderful deeds. Lord, I love the house where you live, the place where your glory dwells. Do not take away my soul along with sinners, my life with those who are bloodthirsty, in whose hands are the wicked schemes, whose right hands are full of bribes. I lead a blameless life. Deliver me and be merciful to me. My feet stand on level ground. In the great congregation, I will praise the Lord. Any questions before we jump into it?
I think that it sounds like kind of far-fetched when he's saying that he's innocent. It sounds like
I put that down as a question. It's like, how can he claim to have led a blameless life?
Right. That's how we want to be.
Maybe.
Yeah.
That's how we want to be.
So we're not sure exactly when this was written, but it's either when Saul was after him or when his sons were trying to or his son was trying to usurp the throne. And so he's asking God to intervene in this situation. And he's not saying that he's completely blameless through all his life. What he's saying is he's blameless in the situation. He's innocent of any wrongdoing here is what he's trying to get at.
Well, are you sure?
Yeah.
Because it says I have led a blameless life. I don't think he's referring just to that.
So think about David in regards to Saul. Saul was constantly trying to kill David. David never once did anything to Saul. He always acted honorably. What?
It's like said, take a piece of his cloak.
Yeah, that was to prove that he could have killed Saul, just to let Saul know. It's like, hey, I let you live. Even when his men were telling him to kill him. Let's see. So verse 1 was, Vindicate me, O Lord, for I have led a blameless life. We talked about that. This next few verses, though, for I have trusted in the Lord and have not faltered. He says, Test me, Lord, and try me. Examine my heart and my mind. For I've always been mindful of your unfailing love and have lived in reliance on your faithfulness. This is what's helping him to lead this blameless life. When we go back to Saul, the reason David never did anything to Saul is because he saw Saul as God's anointed. He wouldn't touch Saul so when we are trusting in God, we're more likely to lead or walk a right path. See, if I'm trusting God to give me what I need, there's no need for me to resort to thievery or extortion or anything else that would be sinful. In verse 2, where it says, Test me and try me, examine my heart. 3 different things that are kind of come back to the same thing. When he's saying, test me, it's kind of like way we test metals. You put them to the fire to see how pure they are, to bring up the dross and all that. Try me, he's actually asking God to put him through a trial so that he can prove his innocence. Not like a court trial, but to go through a situation in his life to where he would react like he's supposed to react. And then examine my heart. We love and worship a God who knows your heart. He knows what you're thinking. The really impressive thing is he still loves us anyway. He knows what we're thinking.
Right.
But David really feels like he's innocent in this situation, which is not something that should be taken lightly. There's a lot of times when we get wronged or we feel like we've been wronged. If you go back and look at all the details, like, yeah, maybe I did have some involvement in that, Verse 4 and 5 kind of go together. I do not sit with the deceitful, nor do I associate with hypocrites. I abhor the assembly of evildoers and refuse to sit with the wicked. The King James, I think, uses a couple different words there.
Dissemblers is one.
Dissemblers for hypocrites. Basically, that means the same thing. They're actors. These are people. They're phonies. Is another word for it. They're pretending to be good, righteous people, but it's just an outward facade. Deep down, they're really corrupt and what have you.
Sometimes I gotta pray about that too, because I'm not sure like what my motives are behind everything. Sometimes like,
Yeah.
do I just not want to go to hell? Is that why I'm following the Lord? Or
There's a
I
lot of
really
people
love
that
him.
they're in it for the fire insurance,
right? Yeah.
and you need to go beyond that. You need to get in that relationship with God. So, also on this though, he's not sitting with these people. He's not hanging out with them. So there's a saying, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. Because who you hang out with, one, says a lot about who you are, but it also says a lot about where you're going. If you're hanging out with a bunch of thieves, you're probably going to think that thievery is a right way to go. Same thing with murderers and such. Yeah. I have a friend who was really big in the rodeo. He's an old guy now, but he talked about the way that he became so good at it is he hung out with the guys that were winning the rodeos. So you have these two groups of people. Some guys would go to the rodeo, they'd have a bad run or whatever. They'd go down to the bar, they'd whine about how they got the bad bull or what have you. The guys that were the winners that he hung out with, after the rodeo, they would sit down and talk about what went right and what they can improve on. And that's how he got better. The same thing with you. If you want to be better at something, hang out with people that are really good at that thing. Verse 6. I wash my hands in innocence and go about your altar, Lord, proclaiming aloud your praise and telling of all your wonderful deeds. So when we wash something, we use something that's cleaner than the thing we're washing, right? Because we're not going to take, a rag that's been laying in the dirt and go over there and start washing your car with it. It's not going to work. So he's washing his hands in innocence. It's the idea of cleanliness, this innocence. And I go about your altar, Lord. There's a few different thoughts on this. They're not completely sure what he meant by this. One thought is that he's putting out so many sacrifices that he's kind of hanging out by the altar because he's constantly sacrificing, which he did. He did a lot of sacrificing stuff. Another thought is he's just wanting to be in God's presence, so he's hanging out at the altar a lot. And he did love to sing and dance before God. When they brought the altar into Jerusalem, his wife actually thought he was making a fool of himself because he was singing and dancing in front of the altar as he was coming into Jerusalem.
Yeah, even when he was a kid, he said that
Good for
like,
him.
God saved
Yeah.
him from
Dancing is
him and his
great.
sheep from like the lion and the bear.
Yep.
He was always, saying God is the one who's great.
Yeah, we went up against Goliath. He's like, you come at me with your spear and your sword. He goes, I come at you in the name of the Lord.
Right. Big difference.
Yep. Verse 8. Lord, I love the house where you live, the place where your glory dwells. Now again, they didn't have the temple there yet. But they did have the tabernacle, which was basically the tent of meeting. So that's probably what he's getting at here, is that he likes to hang out at the tent of meeting in God's presence. This could also mean in the presence of believers, though, because a house doesn't necessarily just mean a building; it could also mean a family.
Right, wherever you meet to worship the Lord with other
Yep.
believers. Huh?
And for us, we should be happy to be able to come to a place, meet with our church family, right? Same thing. Verse 9, do not take away my soul along with sinners, my life with those who are bloodthirsty, in whose hands are wicked schemes, whose right hands are full of bribes. Now this is looking into the future after death. David doesn't want to be counted amongst the thieves, the bloodthirsty, the killers, the murderers. He's saying, I've spent my whole life avoiding these people. I do not want to be grouped with them in the afterlife. That's what he's asking. The same thing with us. If you're spending your time, trying to please God, you really don't want to be in heaven with people who do not want to, had nothing to do with him the whole time.
Here again, he says, like Jenny pointed out, I lead a blameless life. Well, he couldn't lead a blameless life. He was human.
Right.
I mean, he was a sinner.
The thing about David is he messed up a lot, but he always repented.
Maybe there is a difference between living a life of debauchery and living a clean life. Even though we still make mistakes every day, but we're not purposely going out and stealing.
Mhm.
We're not purposely going out and hurting others. We're not purposely, because even in the beginning of Proverbs, it's very, like you said, it's very clear. It says, watch out who you hang out with.
Mhm.
So maybe there is a difference between people. Maybe we are living a blameless life.
Maybe he knew he was blameless because he was coming and asking God for forgiveness too, continually.
Yeah, and not purposely living against the Lord.
I forgot to touch on this. So 1 Corinthians 5, Paul is writing to the church in Corinth, which Corinth was known for its debauchery. I mean, it was a port town. There were sailors coming in doing all kinds of bad things. But he tells the church there not to associate with these people that are, he gives a list, sexually immoral, idolaters. I can't remember all the list. But he's saying, I'm not talking about the people of the world. Because if you were to do that, you have to leave the world in order not to be associated with these. So what that means is we can still go buy our groceries from someone who is immoral or something like that. What we're not supposed to do, though, is hang out with someone who claims to be a Christian and is still leading that life. Because that is where the corruption is going to set in. Because it's like, well, they're doing it, they're Christians, maybe that's okay. And no, it's not. It's just, our bar is not how our neighbor is. Our bar is how Jesus lived. That's how we're supposed to be. If you look at me and set your bar at my level, you've gone way too low.
Raise the standard, huh?
Right. You need to be up there a lot higher than that. Let's see. In whose hands are wicked schemes? I think the King James uses the word mischief. Well, it kind of loses something in our modern translation because we think of mischief as like kids playing pranks and stuff. In the time the King James was written, mischief was actually doing harm to another person. It was a lot more serious thing. It's not like what we think of mischief today. So wicked schemes, I think, is a better fit for a modern language. So he doesn't want to be associated with those people, and whose right hands are full of bribes. There is a verse in Proverbs that talks about how a bribe is a charm in the hand that uses it, or that gives it, or something like that. What David, I think, is seeing here, though, is when justice is getting perverted by people who are bribing people. That is not good. And God does not like that.
I know there is a time in our lives, throughout our lives, where we have to go, okay, this is where I'm at, and look around at the people that we're around and say, no, I don't want to be a part of that, and be separate.
Yeah.
from them, you know.
If you're really getting into the Word of God and you're reading the scriptures, you start realizing, you know what, maybe this isn't such a good idea to be involved in. Then you
Be alone even.
got to kind of distance yourself from that. Find some people that aren't doing that you can be involved with. Don't just completely isolate yourself. There is a place for that, for a time if you need to be alone with God. I have in the past shut my phone off for 3 days and just gone out in the mountains and said, I need some time. But you don't want to keep yourself there. We are a social creation. God made us to be social people. If you isolate yourself, it's not going to be good in the long term.
You can't share God's word like that.
No. So what?
Read books.
Yeah, read books is good.
Hooked up to a book.
But you do need other people.
Yeah, you need other people around you. There's a reason a lot of times when you hear about missionaries going out, they're sent out at least in pairs, if not multiples. It's so they can strengthen each other. And we hit the blameless life. He's asking God, deliver me, be merciful to me. If he does die because of whatever thing is going on at the point, which I'm pretty sure he didn't. He lived to be a very old man. But he's saying, just be merciful in his death and don't put him with those other guys. Verse 12, my feet stand on level ground. In the great congregation, I will praise the Lord. So the great congregation, we could have two meetings here. This could be those people that are living in his time that are worshiping God. They're coming together and they're praising God together at their sacrifices and stuff. This could also mean in the afterlife with the rest of the believers, we're gathering before God because it tells us that we're going to be singing praises to God in the afterlife.
That's going to be a great congregation there, huh?
Yeah, it's like an unnumberable amount or numerable amount. Yeah. And my feet stand on level ground. This is speaking more spiritually than physically. If you're standing on a sloped roof or something, it's possible you're going to slide and slip. We used to talk about people being backsliders. They were once walking with God, and all of a sudden they're backsliding away from God, right? He's saying that he's walking a level ground. He's not going to slip and slide. God's keeping him on that. I think in the next psalm, he's actually going to ask God to make his path level so he doesn't slip. Are there any questions on Psalm 26?
I think as you were reading it, I was thinking, oh, these are goals.
They should be goals.
A righteous life. These are because I was trying to look at myself and say, oh, can I say that of myself?
Yeah.
But then what I was thinking was, oh, I want to strive to live a right life.
Yeah, these are very good as goals, like you said. If you're setting this for yourself, that I'm not going to associate with these people that could lead me astray. That's a great goal. Let's go on to Psalm 27. We have any comments off the stream there? Okay. Psalm 27, verse 1. This is of David again. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When the wicked advance against me to devour me, it is my enemies and my foes who will stumble and fall. Though an army besiege me, my heart will not fear. Though war break out against me, even then I will be confident. One thing I ask from the Lord, this only do I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze on the beauty of the Lord and to seek him in his temple. For in the day of trouble, he will keep me safe in his dwelling. He will hide me in the shelter of his sacred tent and set me high upon a rock. Then my head will be exalted above the enemies who surround me. At his sacred tent, I will sacrifice with shouts of joy. I will sing and make music to the Lord. Hear my voice when I call, Lord. Be merciful to me and answer me. My heart says of you, seek his face. Your face, Lord, I will seek. Do not hide your face from me. Do not turn your servant away in anger. You have been my helper. Do not reject me or forsake me, God, my Savior. Though my father and mother forsake me, the Lord will receive me. Teach me your way, Lord. Lead me in a straight path because of my oppressors. Do not turn me over to the desire of my foes, for false witnesses rise up against me, spouting malicious accusations. I remain confident of this. I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait for the Lord. Be strong and take heart and wait for the Lord. Any questions before you start on that one? All right. So the Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear?
No one fears the Lord.
Yeah,
Right.
Nobody.
I guess the wicked would be the fear.
So what?
The wicked would be the fear.
Well, he's saying if God is my light and my salvation, remember, salvation doesn't just mean being saved from our sins. For his time, salvation could also be to be saved from a military campaign against you. To be saved, it just means you're being saved from something.
Kind of like if God before you, who can be against you?
Right. So if God is his guiding light and God is going to save him, what we got to fear?
Yeah.
Right? Jesus conquered death for us, so what do we have to fear?
And even though there is wicked there. Yeah,
Yeah.
there is wicked there, but he's so far beyond them. He just can, they're gone.
Yeah.
Well, they could be schizos too.
Yeah, they could just,
And that's really
But God
based
can take care of it.
So
Really
you
based on
actually,
his faith.
Right.
so you actually fear itself in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, in a way, but even that,
God would be
So-
in trouble.
it's been said that fear is actually a lack of trust in God because you're not trusting God to handle the situation. I'm not saying that I'm perfect and I'm never afraid of things, because there are things that come along and it's like, oh, I don't want this to happen. But we should have faith in God that he's going to work this out. It'll be for the good of everyone that loves him.
I always thought it was great that, the Bible always says that he's our loving father. And the father's gonna take care of his children, and God is gonna take care of us.
Right.
Even though there's bad situations that are always gonna come, he's gonna get us through it. We don't have to fear.
Yeah. And his way of getting you through it might be to take you home at that point, to take you out of the situation. So we're not afraid of that, because that just means we're closer to him now. So when this stuff happens, we hear about these wars going on, and we hear about like kids getting killed and stuff. They're closer to God now.
Wasn't that Paul that said he wanted to go home and be with the Lord, but
Yeah,
he would stay if God wanted him
right. To die was gain. I think he's the way he put it.
to, right?
I remember my grandma's sitting there, and she was an avid Bible reader. The older she got, she kept saying, I just want to go home.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that, yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
I just want to go home, you know.
My clients say that.
Yeah. Verse 2, when the wicked advance against me to devour me, it is my enemies and foes who will stumble and fall. Do not think that he was facing cannibals. This is not literal.
The bottom says slander,
Okay, that could be slander.
Oh,
in the devourer it says slander.
It was looked upon as your enemies as animals, and that's kind of how they thought of as these animals coming to devour you. It doesn't mean to actually eat him.
Yeah, my flesh.
but it feels like that. It
Yeah.
feels like that. When you have a panic attack, you feel like it might eat you alive.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Oh, it's horrible.
But what he's saying here is when they advance against them, it's going to be them that falls. He's very confident that God's going to get him through this. Though an army besiege me, my heart will not fear. Though war break out against me, even then will I be confident. I just got this picture of like a modern day war zone. There's like bombs going off, and David's just standing there going, bring it on.
No worries.
David, King David. I just got this picture. Yeah, they didn't have like bombs and stuff. But verse 4. One thing I asked from the Lord, this only do I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze on the beauty of the Lord and seek him in his temple. Again, this is capital Lord. This is Yahweh. This is the personal God of Israel. This, the one who was almost portrayed as like a wedding scene in the Old Testament, where he was taking on Israel as his bride. This is the one thing he asks for him, is that he can just dwell with him forever. Verse 5. For in the day of trouble he will keep me safe in his dwelling. He will hide me in the shelter of his sacred tent and set me high upon a rock. So in that culture, let's say you're traveling to a new town. You arrived in the city, you would go sit in the square, and someone from the town would come and offer you a place to stay. You'd be their guest. It was kind of an honor for them to do this. While you were their guest, you were under their protection. If somebody came along who was unhappy with you, the owner of the house would probably die trying to protect you. That's how serious it was. So when he is in God's house, he's feeling God's protection. It's a very safe place to be. Verse 6, then my head will be exalted above the enemies who surround me. At his sacred tent I will sacrifice with shouts of joy. I will sing and make music to the Lord. So the sacred tent is the tabernacle where they kept the Ark of the Covenant. They viewed that as where God dwelled. They knew that he was everywhere, but they knew that God was there. If they wanted to get close to God, they'd go to the tent.
Yeah, wasn't that always about like the posture of your own heart? You know, like you were making commitment of, you know, it wasn't so much that, I don't know, maybe that his presence was there more than anywhere else, but it was that you, like yourself, would humble yourself before God there at the tent.
Yeah,
Was that part of it?
I could see that.
Because God is everywhere.
I know that when they built the temple, the steps leading up to the temple were not evenly spaced. So I didn't want anyone just running up to the temple. You had to approach it looking down at your feet to make sure you didn't misstep. So it was more of a humble approach to God when you got to the temple.
So the temple is the two rooms. There was the outer court,
Then the Holy of
and
Holies.
then the holy, where the curtains were.
Yeah.
That's the temple, right?
That sounds like the first temple, yeah. There was 3 temples.
Well, the one that Ray was talking about, where only the priest could go in.
Yeah, so all of the temples had that. Yeah. I need some space. So we have this rectangle here. And you have your doors out here. And there was the veil in here. And this was like the inner part. This is where the Ark of the Covenant was.
And the lampstands and stuff?
Uh,
Were the lampstands in there?
the cherubim were there. I think the lampstands may have been in here.
Oh,
Because, yeah, they had to be. Because only the high priest could approach the inner part of the temple. This is beyond David's time now. This is after David's time. We're kind of getting off topic. But even in the tabernacle, it was very similar. It was set up the same way, except instead of doors here, there was curtains that were kind of pulled back. And then this would have had the showbread in here, the lampstands, because different priests would have been taking care of that sort of stuff. And only the high priest could go into what was called the Holy of Holies. And then later on, so this could be the way the tent was set up, and it had a courtyard around it too, of curtains. And this is kind of where the rest of the believers could be. And then later on, when they actually built the temple, there was another area out here to where what were called the God-fearers could be. Not Jewish people, but people that wanted to worship God anyway.
You said this is after David's time. So
Yeah.
what did David have in his time?
It was a similar setup. This was a tent. The ark was still in the tent, and Instead of like giant doors here, it was a curtain that was pulled back. It was a really big tent. They have a recreation of it, and I was amazed at how big it actually was. But they would have had something like this, and this fence was like drapes and curtains type thing.
How big was the tent?
Huge.
Be like a circus tent?
It was rectangular, but it wouldn't surprise me if that big. The ones I saw recreation of, yeah, it was a whole lot bigger than I thought it was.
So what is the piece of, I don't wanna say furniture, but the piece of furniture that was in the outer courtyard, but
Okay.
had the horns? Was it the horns or the?
That's probably the altar. I
Okay.
think the altar, the sea may have had the horns too. I can't remember now. That'd be worth looking up. I remember there's another verse about some guy clinging to the horns of the altar.
Yeah,
Right.
And that altar was massive too. Think about putting a whole bull on something, and they put the whole bull on this massive. You know,
There must
it's,
have been steps going up to it.
there. Actually,
Was it?
no.
No.
God didn't want them to have steps going up to it because they
Oh.
didn't want people looking up their skirt
Oh my goodness.
There you
or
go.
their robe, I should say.
Right.
But no, it's this. Their altar probably like from this corner around there, maybe here. That was the altar.
oh, wow.
That was a big thing.
Yeah.
Verse 7. Hear my voice when I call, Lord. Be merciful and answer me. So this is a cry out to God. I mean, this is a heartfelt cry. My heart says to you, seek his face. To your face, Lord, will I seek. Many years ago, I came across this and it really hit me. Why would you seek someone's face? Let's say you're trying to talk to somebody, maybe it's a parent, and you really want to know how they're feeling about the situation. You want to see their face to read what's going on in this, to understand if they're angry or happy or what have you. So if your kid comes up to like you looking in the face, you turn away. That's a real cold thing to do. And David's saying that, Lord, don't turn away from me. I want to see your face. So when you're seeking a person's face, you're wanting to connect in a more personal way. And we try to teach young boys to look another man in the eyes when you're talking to them. Don't be looking away and stuff. It's a sign of respect. Well, yeah. So when you're seeking the person's face, you want to know what they're thinking, what they're feeling. It's not just because you want to stare at the face. Okay. No, well, I look at your guys' faces all the time. And I can tell when I'm saying something that's going over people's heads because people's eyes start glassing over. I see question marks. I see,
Think about the deer in the headlights, huh?
yeah, I see that too. So David is seeking God's face, and he's wanting to be basically closer to God, I think, in this. Verse 9. Do not hide your face from me. Do not turn your servant away in anger. We've probably seen this, at least on TV shows. I've seen in cartoons too, where someone gets mad and they like turn around, won't even look at you, right? David's saying, don't do that, God, please. Yeah. Do not reject me or forsake me, God my Savior. Verse 10. Though my father and mother forsake me, the Lord will receive me. He's not saying that his mother and father actually forsook him. He's saying even if his own parents forsake him, God will have him. So with us, we shouldn't be putting a lot of our value in who we are based on our relationship with other people. Because people they're fickle. You know, they might like you one day and hate you the next day. You can't put your value in that. But God is always going to love you. Verse 11, teach me your way, Lord. Lead me in a straight path because of my oppressors. We're getting back to the whole standing on level ground thing. We're walking a straight path that God set out for us, so we're not going to get drawn off to the right or the left and get into trouble that we're not supposed to be into. God's leading us on the straight path. And it's a level path, so we're not going to stumble. That's what he's asking for anyway. Verse 12, do not turn me over to the desire of my foes, for false witnesses rise up against me, spouting malicious accusations. He is not unique in this. This has been going on for centuries. When people don't like other people, they make up stuff bad about them. It could be an exaggeration of the truth, or it could just be an all-out lie. It happens. Don't believe me? Just watch a news program.
Media.
It doesn't matter which news program you watch. They're all going to be saying something nasty about someone else. I remain confident of this. I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. I'm going to ask you, it's kind of obvious, but what is the land of the living?
That's where we're at now.
Right, we're in the land of the living. We're not walking amongst the dead. This isn't the afterlife. This is now.
God's going to take care of us now. We don't have
Right.
to wait.
Mine says I had fainted. What is that? How is that?
Which verse?
13, I had fainted.
Are you King James?
Yeah.
I have fainted?
I had fainted unless I had believed to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living.
He would have lost all of his strength if he didn't believe that. He wouldn't have had any.
That's like almost, I wonder if that's one of those things where the old texts, the King James uses different texts than the NIV, so there might be a slight difference there. But that is, it's like a double negative. I would have fainted if not for this.
Yeah, okay.
So he's remaining confident that he'll see the goodness of God in the land of the living. So while he's alive, he's going to see God doing great things. We should all have that faith too. We're going to see God do great things in this lifetime.
What I'm seeing here is, we're all very, very concerned of other people's opinions of us. And so like gossip and, talking about each other would devour each other. And he's concerned about what lies people are telling about him. So it's, we all really struggle with, oh, I hope that I'm not, what are they thinking of me? That like nearly devours people, honestly.
It can.
When you're younger, when you get older.
Does it go away, Georgia?
There is a verse in the New Testament. I can't pull up the exact location right now, but it says something to the effect of, "Don't worry about what other people are saying about you." And it's got the idea of that you're like in charge of a group of people, like you're a boss or something like that. It says, because know that when you were younger, you did the same thing.
Yeah.
You talked, so don't really be worried about what other people are talking about you. Don't pay a whole lot of attention to it.
It does get easier when you get older, Jenny.
Yeah, you just care less.
It goes away after a while. You're like, you know what?
Yeah,
Energy for that.
yeah. I don't.
It's like,
You don't give your energy.
You want to believe that? Go ahead.
Don't waste your energy, that's it.
What I
You have
found-
energy every day.
What I found though is like over time, things work themselves out, and things are proven true or not over time. So I don't really worry about it so much anymore.
And people that are causing problems usually dig a hole and fall in it themselves.
Yeah.
So you just stay away from them, and that usually does happen.
When I had all the tenants at the trailer park, it's kind of funny because one week, one tenant would be telling me I needed to evict their neighbor because of something their neighbor had done. The next week, they're like best buddies.
Oh, yeah. They get-
So if I needed one to pass along a message, it's like, are you guys friends right now, or where are we at in this whole thing?
Yeah,
So, but yeah, the whole idea that one minute they're hating each other, next minute they're best buddies. Like, okay, I'm not even gonna try and keep up with this. Just you guys do you.
Right.
Verse 14, the last verse. Wait for the Lord, be strong and take heart and wait for the Lord. David's going through some stuff, but he knows he just has to be patient. God's got his own timing to work this stuff out. And this is really hard for us Americans with our microwaves and our instant gratification. We don't like waiting. But God's got his timing.
My phone doesn't load.
Yeah, you hit the reboot if it takes 5 seconds for your phone to turn on. Like, what?
Right.
I think this is more than just waiting a few minutes, though. This is, you need to wait a few days, a few weeks.
Sometimes it can be months, sometimes it can be years.
Wait for the Lord, and don't just give up on the Lord because you don't have it right now.
Right. There's, when you pray about something, there's 3 answers: yes, no, or wait. And a lot of us have a problem with the waiting part. We'd almost rather have like a no than a wait.
Right.
But there are several examples through history of maybe one family member praying that another person will be saved. And it can take 20, 30 years before this God finally gets a hold of this person. So we just need to be patient and realize that God's in control. And again, he's going to work it out in a way that's good for all those that love him. Not just what I want. See, if I got everything I wanted, I think the world would be a mess.
Right.
Oh,
Right.
oh, oh, no.
Because maybe what I want isn't exactly what everybody else wants. And so it's a good thing. I don't want to be in charge. I never want to be president because, yeah.
Right. When you're praying for rain, somebody else is praying for sunshine.
Right. And yeah, you could totally mess up their party or something because they got rained on. No, so God's going to work all this out in a way that works for everybody.
I remember telling a group of women, I says, I would not want his job. And they thought that was so funny. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I wouldn't want the Lord's job for nothing,
Oh.
because I would.
You want to see something interesting?
Playtime.
Look at pictures of our past presidents of when they went into office and when they left office.
Yeah, I
Oh,
heard
yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
They age
They
a
look 20
lot.
Years, 20 years older. Yeah.
It's got to be a stressful job. I would not want it.
I think I remember seeing like Obama before and after.
Yeah, he really should. Clinton was another one. Bill
Yeah,
Clinton.
Clinton was-
Yeah, it's just the stress of the job. Anyway, any other questions on the Psalm 26 or 27?